earlier today, and you might even see this on the news if it's a really slow day, 3 typically genius MPs sucking intently on the public teat, and 3, personal opinion, properly titular heads of grubby automotive lobby groups stood outside the Senate entrance to the National Monument to the Death of Integrity in Public Life in front of a really neat display of electric cars that, statistically, nobody really wants. Except them, of course, pushing that barrow, dude, bilaterally. A brilliant 3-a-side symphony and double reach-around flat. It's quite awesome to watch elite performers hard at work in this way. Lobbyland and Parliament in perfect symbiosis. At the end, of course, they got down on their knees in unison, metaphorically, and gagged in the most dignified manner for media attention. And I know this because that's what this press release is all about. It's what all press releases are all about. Please comment on what we do. We beg you. And in this case, happy to help. Dudes. Strong public interest case right here. These entertaining individuals refer to themselves as the, quote, parliamentary friends of electric vehicles. This is the best name they could come up with, presumably. And if I wrote that name in the script for a Netflix documentary, a studio executive would almost certainly call me up straight away and invite me to stop smoking Ready Rock on the company dime. I'm autoexpert.com.au. New cars cheap, but Australia only. Website. Code. The rhetoric flowing around EVs in the thought-bubbled paradise of Canberra really has become one of the most elite torrents of bullshit in the world. It's the Niagara Falls of pro-EV bullshit, the Burj Khalifa of highfalutin electric horse shit. In this latest incidence of public electric indecency, there were several EVs on display from 7:30 in the morning, I think, and speeches from the leeches starting at 9:20. They do this in hell, of course, as I understand it, every damn day. Here, however, it's just done occasionally in the hope that perhaps it'll be newsworthy. The honourable leeches from Parliament, the EV friends, part of the team that wants to take away your ability to criticise them with their disgracefully Orwellian misinformation bill. These people were 2 glorified medical doctors you've probably never heard of, Monique Ryan and Michelle Ananda Raja, and the Speaker himself, Milton Dick, M. Dick. What an outstanding Australian would-be rap name we've got right there. If that career as Speaker doesn't take off, dude, you know what to do next. M. Dick in the house. He has, of course, the knockoff multi-tool of academic qualifications, an arts degree, which is just perfect. We've got 2 medics who probably think they're the smartest people in the world, like every other doctor I've ever met, and arty old M. Dick. I can't imagine a trio better academically equipped to speak with some certain authority on the key issues and challenges regarding the adoption of EVs in Australia. The parliamentary friends of electric vehicles. Excuse me. The very concept that you can be a friend of electric vehicles is just as absurd as being a friend of the earth, isn't it? Friend of the earth, dude, you're unlikely to invite it over one Saturday evening for beers and possibly to, sleep with your sister or something, are you? Friends of electric vehicles, just the same. Lobbyland, of course, supplied T-Dub from the car industry, somewhat grandiose lobby group, the Federal Chamber of Carmaker Muckraking. And also, of course, lead singer of T-Dub and the Spice Girls, in a parallel universe perhaps, such as Fishwick. T-Dub is a real talent, of that there is no doubt, and I do hope Chris Bowen has forgiven him over that nasty business concerning the fuel efficiency standard. They both had their trousers well around their ankles at the end of that one, metaphorically, and nobody I know ever asked to see that. Sammy J was there as well. Samantha Johnson, S-Man, in a Marvel universe, perhaps. Arc Reactor, not included. Big Johnson, for rapping, perhaps. That fits somehow, oddly. Ladies and ladies, give it up for Big Johnson. I'd go to that concert. Frankly, I think we all would. I really like her, is what I'm saying. A lot. I think it's her, like pronouns. Such a freaking minefield lately. I try not to go there. After the unmitigated triumph, of course, of launching those glorious Chinese pole stars here in Australia, Big Johnson popped entertainingly out in the corner penthouse of the Electric Vehicle Council recently, which counts among its members key planet savers, such as Ampol, which has sadly been unable to install the public EV chargers it solemnly promised to, despite significant multiple government reach-arounds. Imagine that. Who next? Atico is there. Yes. Tragically forced to fire sale the country's first electric ute. 50% off, dude, just like that. Mainly because, how can I put this diplomatically? Nobody wanted that awful shitbox. Go figure. Insofar as I can tell, the minor issue there was, and kind of remains, that it is an overpriced piece of useless shit compared with, a proper diesel ute for $45,000 less, offering, double the range and double the payload. Plus, you can fuel a proper ute up in minutes at any servo, even an Ampol one. BP is there too in the council, an acknowledged global leader on climate reform. Also, Combank. Yes. Dude, one thing I've learned in my 75 short years down under, if you can trust anyone to save the planet, it's going to be one of the big four banks, right? Always there, dependably putting people first. So selfless. Daimler Truck Shitsville Pacific is part of the council they're in, plus Nissan, three-prong, multiple coal-burning grid operators, plus a bunch of finance companies and rental car companies as well. All proud members of the Electric Vehicle Council with Big Johnson out in front. Parliamentary friends of electric vehicles by association. Paid up dues, dude. This is how the cake of greenwashing gets baked, it seems to me. Imagine spinning all of those members' plates contemporaneously. I could never do that. I'd probably say what I really thought about them one day, which I do note does tend to be something of a relationship terminator, doesn't it? And the final Lobbyland member on the steps, spruiking that green virtue, advocating like a 15-year-old, which is merely to say it quite enthusiastically, Rowan Martin, the cheese of NLPA, the National Automotive Leasing and Salary Packaging Association. Not quite as grandiose sounding, I think, as Federal Chamber of Automotive Arseholes, but close, dude. Like, better than some council. NLPA advocates on behalf of 11 to 15, depending on how you count them, extremely well-heeled car finance companies, another key segment renowned worldwide for its deep commitment to climate reform. Financiers. An unkind person might suggest that the colour NLPA's members worship is not green, but in fact gold. Still, I suppose, one can worship both green and gold, and that's pretty Australian, dude, when you think about it. A particularly churlish individual might cynically suggest that NLPA's members are more likely to be advocating to keep the torrent of government incentive gold flowing for as long as humanly possible, because worshipping fat stacks of salary sacrifice cash does seem like their religion, at least to me. 50,000 extra EVs were sold in 2023, plus another 50,000 that would otherwise probably not have been sold in 2024, all basically salary packaged. This is what those government incentives actually bought, right? You could call it $5,000 in gross profit per deal times 100,000 extra EVs over 2 years. That's what? 5,000 times 100,000, take away Albo's IQ. That's $500 million lazy bucks in golden salary packaging largesse, isn't it? Which is more addictive, I'd suggest, to NLPA's members than Walter White's high-grade crystal meth from Breaking Bad. Alternatively, I suppose they could all be just genuinely trying to save the planet on the side steps of the monument to the death of public integrity. Unlikely, I'd suggest, but certainly possible. Australians living in the outer suburbs and regional areas are embracing EVs, with plug-in hybrids experiencing a notable rise in sales. Importantly, with the assistance of government policy, plug-in hybrids act as an essential bridge to full electric driving. Rowie Martin there. And he's probably going to need a rap name, isn't he? So, Romar from NLPA. Best I can do, dude. Romar from NLPA. And he's not just the CEO there, but the inaugural one. Imagine that. Prior to that, of course, he's worked with a long list of other climate action leaders, including Tabcorp and National Australia Bank, and of course those epic scandal mongers, KPMG. No suggestion is of course made that Romar had anything to do with KPMG's award-winning performance in the Who's the Biggest Corporate Scandal-Mongering Cockhead National Championships recently. He just worked there once, dude, like give him a break. Jesus. I imagine Romar lies awake at night these days, quite aroused, imagining the upgrade to the gold-carrying pipes they're going to need to install for our fully electric driving future. Imagine that. The torrent of gold at the end of the net zero rainbow is immense for some. That, I guess, and his altruistic members being awarded the Nobel Peace Prize for planet salvation. Of friggin' course. Particularly amidst a cost of living crisis, ongoing government support to encourage plug-in hybrid supply and take-up, along with battery electric vehicles, is critical to maintain affordability for cleaner versions of the types of vehicles Australians want to drive, while advancing the nation's emissions reduction goals. Romar, there again, and sadly, this is the point at which we must start respectfully to disagree. And please remember, I'm really only here discussing this now because that shitty press release is in fact a de facto invitation from NLPA to comment on this initiative, and I'm happy to comply. So, first up, personal opinion. Nobody at any time, in any context, aimed at any other person should ever start a sentence with the following two words. Particularly amidst. My new self-help bestseller, Sound Like a Pompous Twat, without really trying, is going to explain why in far greater detail than we have time for now, but that's going to be when I eventually write it, of course. But in short, nouns and verbs, dude, that's where the real writing is at. In any case, I think what he really means is just in a cost of living crisis. CEOs and other bigwigs, in my view, should always say out loud the words which typically their junior spin counsel writes for them, before they sign off on them in some press release and thus make them amenable to public critique of this nature. Go figure, particularly amidst. Point 2, perhaps more substantively, the statement essentially says that taxpayer incentives for EVs and plug-ins playing their part in the cost of living crisis while our members hoover it up and rake it in and also, save the fucking planet. Please keep that up, dudes. We love it. I think that's what it means anyway. And I would argue that new cars have less than a bugger all role to play in fixing any frickin' cost of living crisis. Because, dude, if you can afford a new car, you are not living inside a cost of living crisis, are you? So to me at least, this seems like an attempt, and frankly I would argue a fairly lame one that does not even withstand basic cursory scrutiny. It's an attempt to link members' self-serving goals, seemingly, more car finance deals, a torrent of gold, who doesn't want that, with public good, which would be solving a cost of living crisis. And this seems to me like a monumental logical fallacy, because if one cannot afford the food, the rent, the mortgage, the petrol, the tolls and the repayments already on one's plate, the bills that just crop up incessantly, health insurance rates, credit card debt, freaking birthdays, school uniforms, I don't know, the dentist, Christmas, it's just around the corner, isn't it? If all that shit has you properly maxed out right now, then you are having a dead set cost of living crisis. And in that situation, a new car, and in particular, a new EV or plug-in hybrid, is absolutely fucking nowhere on your radar, is it? It's actually laughable to me seeing CEOs in their shitty Hugo Boss talking earnestly about cost of living issues. Seems intensely hypocritical to me. Kind of like me advocating a particular hairstyle when you think about it. Anyway, as for advancing the nation's emissions reduction goals, that's too easy, dude. Fish in a barrel. If we made every car electric tomorrow using Harry Potter's big wand and, Big Johnson's assistance perhaps, and pretended there was absolutely no emissions burden in doing so, and further pretended that electricity was totally green, national emissions would fall 10%. And all of that is, of course, a fantasy demonstrating the hypothetical maximum that might be achieved using EVs and magic in light vehicle electric dystopia. 10% maximum. And B, Australia is, of course, the world's largest exporter of coal. We are also the second largest exporter of liquid natural gas, in a photo finish for first against Kuwait. Burning this stuff vicariously overseas more than doubles our emissions. This is a fact. Net zero knob holders down under forget conveniently that we proud sons and daughters of Ned Kelly are collectively a global hydrocarbon pimp, slutting it out continuously, dude, 24/7, 365. And we hope against hope that people won't notice the brain-bending hypocrisy of also championing the virtue of net zero. This is how we roll as a nation. As for this nebulous claim about cleaner versions of the cars Australians want to drive, here goes. The top 10 new cars sold in Shitsville in September were, in order, RAV4, Ranger, Hilux, Everest, D-Max, Outlander, Land Cruiser Sportage, CX-3 and CX-5. Now, when I look at that list, I can tell that only one of those vehicles is available as a plug-in hybrid. That would be the Outlander. And none is a battery EV. They don't have a single battery-only variant. These are our 10 most popular cars. These are the cars actual Australians want to drive when they vote with their wallets. It's what they buy, okay? And these figures include all the corporate sales, which are somewhat skewed by green virtue, net zero fleet procurement policies. The cars actually bought by private individuals are even less green as a mix than that. This often stated preference for EVs is a complete myth. It's a convenient political myth, certainly. It's the money shot of lobbyland myths, certainly with these two lobby groups. And it's a capital EV evangelist myth, isn't it? In fact, diesel vehicle sales are up almost 11,000 units so far this year. And this does not include heavy vehicles, which are pretty stagnant. Hybrids, not plug-ins, just ordinary RAV4 style hybrids, are up more than 60,000 vehicles. Petrol, like straight ICE type petrol vehicles, are down 47,000. So the rise in hybrids more than accounts for the reduction in petrol only. Plug-ins are also up by about 8,500 sales. EV sales are basically stagnant in the year to date, after a significant bump last year in the face of the first year of full FBT incentives for salary packaging. People certainly don't have very much additional thirst for EVs in Australia, despite so far $1.1 billion in salary packaging incentives. The broad spectrum unpalatability of EVs is widely evidenced globally too. Just look at any international newspaper and you'll see an EV sales slump story. With basically all car makers who can backpedaling furiously on EVs, and those who can't do that, mainly the EV-only manufacturers like Tesla and Polestar, right? They're discounting the crap out of them and even selling them at a loss just to move surplus stock. And in that case, I'm looking at you right now, MG, which in toto, I would argue, would be why the three honourable parliamentary leeches took valuable time away from their campaign to essentially annihilate free speech in Australia to participate in this bullshit EV friendship initiative. And their lobbyland counterparts just seem to think it was a grand idea to put on a battery-powered faux summernats sideshow, silent summernats, this morning on the side steps of the monument to the death of public integrity. Jesus. Thank you, NLPA. Without that fascinating press release you kindly provided and that invitation to comment, I would have had no idea that this unpalatable sideshow even occurred. And you are right. People do deserve to know exactly how limitless the pro-EV bullshit torrent really is. It's gobsmacking. Thanks very much for the invitation to comment also. I think we can all agree that worked out most serendipitously indeed.